The Razer Barracuda Pro was made for people who want a premium all-in-one headset, from gaming on console to PC, but also using this as regular headphones outside when you're using your phone. It has a very sleek design and there's no detachable mic. The mic is actually integrated, so it's not going to stand out in a bad way when you're using this out in public. Since versatility is such a big selling point of this device, let's go ahead and start off with connectivity options. Just like it says on the box, this device is compatible with a PC, PlayStation, Switch, Android, and iOS. And there are two ways of connecting this device. First, you can use the USB Type-C transmitter. That's Razer's Hyperspeed, and it's 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection. You can use that USB Type-C in your PC, in your phone. I've used it in my Android. You can use that directly on the Switch by plugging it right in. But if your device doesn't have a USB Type-C port, you can use the adapter. So the wireless dongle will go inside that, and then you'd have a Type A port at the end, which you would plug into like your console, like a PS4, because that doesn't have USB Type-C on it. Now, something that's very important to note out the gate is while this does have 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth, you can't do them both at the same time. Even though the Razer Smart Switch says it's dual wireless, when you double tap this button, which is what's going to switch from Bluetooth to 2.4 gigahertz or vice versa, you switch to them, which means you disconnect from your other device. So you can be connected to PC or your phone and you'll have to switch between them, but you can't be getting audio from both at the same time. So if you were playing a game on your PC and then you got a call on your phone, you could just press the double tap the smart switch button to switch over to Bluetooth to your phone, then press the power button to answer the call. The problem with that is if you were playing with the noise cancellation on, or maybe if you even didn't have it on, you might not even hear your phone at all because you're not going to hear audio through your headphones. So you might not even know that you were getting a call. And then when you do switch to your phone, you're not hearing the game anymore. So you're doing one or the other, but you can't do both at the same time. And that's already quite disappointing because these two devices, these SteelSeries Arctis 9 and the Odyssey Penrose, both can do that. Arctis 9, I bought this for $200, and Odyssey Penrose, I got this for $300. And I bought the Razer Barracuda Pro for its launch price of $250. So these are the types of devices that it's directly competing with. Now let's go ahead and get into the controls of this device. Now most of the controls are on the left ear cup, though it's honestly extremely hard to see the L. There's actually an L right in the middle right there. I'd probably have to crank my ISO like crazy for you to actually see it. Anyway, the first button here is power. Hold this to turn it on. And then same thing, you hold it to turn it off. Now this light will change different colors depending on how it's connected. So right now it's light blue, and that means it's going to be connected to the 2.4 gigahertz connection, which is in my computer, but also it's technically still paired to my phone Bluetooth. As you see here, it says Razer Barracuda Pro, and then this light's on light blue. But if I actually try to play any audio, for instance, then it'll see that like it played and then start pausing. It automatically will stop any audio. Audio won't actually play to this while it's connecting. If there's Bluetooth audio, it's not going to play while it's connected to 2.4 at the same time. Now, if I were to turn Bluetooth off, she just said disconnected. And now this turns green because it's only connected to the 2.4 gigahertz right now. So that's light blue and green. And also I can have it only Bluetooth. And this is a darker blue. It's kind of hard to see with the way the camera is, but this is only Bluetooth right now. So right now it's not going to get any audio from my PC, just from my phone. So if I were to play a song, then I can hear it in my headphones now. Now switching between those is done with this smart switch button. It's actually on the right ear cup. You double tap it to do that. This button has some other functionality as well. It's for the active noise cancellation. So if you tap it once, it will cycle between noise cancellation on, off, or ambient. So I'll talk about how the active noise cancellation works a little bit later. It's basically just to drown out and cancel out background noise. Now getting back to this power button, this can be used to control your phone besides just powering it on and off. So you can start playing tracks or pausing them with this button. This would pause it just by pressing once and then play. And you can answer calls like that too. Double tap, and then you can skip tracks or triple, and then you can go back a track like that. So pretty useful. And while the device is off, you can hold this for 5 seconds and it'll set it to Bluetooth pairing mode. Right next to that power button, we have the USB Type-C port, and this is for charging it. The device cannot be used while it's charging. And you do not actually need to connect this to your computer to update the firmware. The firmware is updated on the dongle. Maybe that'll change in the future, but in my case, when I want to update my dongle, I just put the USB Type-C thing in there and that was it. I actually didn't even have to, I had to turn this on, but I didn't have to physically connect it to my PC. It takes about 4 hours to charge. I don't know exactly how long the battery life is supposed to be, but it did last over a day for me at like 80% charge or something. So the battery life was good for me so far. There's a volume wheel here next to the power button on the other side. This will be the system volume. On your phone, it'll make the volume go up and down. And then also on PC, it'll be your Windows system volume. For PS4, it's just going to be the headset volume itself. There's also a mic mute button here. Tap it, or well, click it in or click it out. Now, when it's green, that means it's active. So kind of counterintuitive, but when it's in, mute it, green, active. The integrated beamforming noise canceling microphones are on the front right here with these little slits, and I'll demonstrate how these sound in a bit. Now, since I'm already talking about the physical makeup of this device, let's go ahead and get into comfort and build quality early. This is something Razer really got right. This is the new most comfortable headset that I've ever used, even more comfortable than the HyperX Cloud 2 wireless. These ear cushions are incredibly soft. They're deeper than the Cloud 2, but they're also even softer somehow. The overall design of this headset, it feels and looks a whole lot like the Sony XM4. If you've seen that in a store before, like in Best Buy, you can try those on. You can get like little sample audios, and I've tried those also. One of the best sounding headsets or headphones that I've ever used. And they copied a lot from this as far as like the design, how it looks and how it feels. Just incredible when it comes to comfort. The headband up top isn't quite as soft, but it still does its job very well. Adjustment brackets here, and they don't go like super far, but far enough, I think. Now, keep in mind that this is the left ear cup right here. One of the problems I have is the swivel does not go in, it goes out. So it goes the wrong way. So like you can put it on your head, but it would be like this way, unless you want to flip it in reverse and then have the ears on the wrong side. So if you put it back on right here, you'd be reversed. Or this would be the left, which this is supposed to be my right. But also the problem is it has a little bit of swivel one way, and then the other way it comes all the way in. But as it comes in, it naturally clamps back together. So if you did use this, it would choke you just like most of the other headsets that I've reviewed. I had to take that off. I don't like how it does that. So I'll give you an example of how it should be done. This is the only headset that I have where I actually do like the swivel. This is the Odyssey Penrose. So this is the left side, this is the right side. If I have this on, I take this off. What I want to do is I would move it out to swivel it out, put it around my neck. And as you can see, it comes out like just the way that it naturally is. When you take it off, the swivel comes out. Whereas these, when you have swivel on the Razer, then they clamp in. So this one chokes you, this one doesn't. Penrose got that done better. Penrose ear cushions, not nearly as soft, not nearly as cushy, and there is more clamping force when it's actually on your head. So overall in comfort, this thing's got some issues it takes getting used to. Also, this is really heavy. I'll put the weight on the screen, but this one's not as heavy. The Razer Barracuda Pro is completely plastic, so it makes it lightweight. Now, this does cause some concern when it comes to the build quality as far as like durability. I was able to get some light workout in with these, but I wouldn't do like plyometrics or anything. Honestly, most headsets I probably wouldn't. One potential concern is that since these are fake leather ear cushions, your ears will get hot if you are getting hot. So like when I was outside, I was just doing a little walk and it was like 95 degrees out there and there was, a lot of sweat going on. So if you're going to be working out with these, then that is something to keep in mind. But these do go completely over your ears. Like these ear cushions are super deep and they're super wide, and just the fit while you're doing anything active is just so good. I like it a lot in contrast to this device, which is one of the most uncomfortable that I've used, which is the SteelSeries Arctis 9. This has this ski goggle headband, which I don't like at all. And it has these cloth ear cushions. I know a lot of people like cloth, but this is kind of scratchy, hard cloth. And this just, the band never really, it causes like, it's either tension or it's loose, but it isn't, there's no padding on it. That's the problem with this thing. You can make it loose or tighter, but it'll never be soft. The Cloud 2 and Cloud 2 wireless, other devices that I really like the comfort of, but when I put these on, they're really lightweight and I like the durability because of these aluminum frames. The problem is these ear cushions, while they're really comfortable, I wouldn't say a problem, but they're not as deep as the Razers. Just pressing these in, the Razers are deeper and they come back out. Like, look how slow the Razers come out. Yeah, that Barracuda, woo, that's so soft when you actually put it on. So absolutely top-notch comfort for the Barracuda Pro. Build quality, I might be a little bit careful. You might be able to hear this creaking a little bit. it's not super solid, and the whole flex thing that a lot of YouTubers do to kind of show it off, I wouldn't really try it with this device. Also, while I do like the finish of this, it is a fingerprint magnet, and it's pretty hard to see the logo, which is cool actually when you're out in public. You don't really want that, like, yeah, I'm using a Razer gamer headset, but it does attract fingerprints quite a bit. But just to end it out, these little slits up top are really just vents. Now let's move into the most important part of this device, at least the way I see headsets: headphone audio quality. And this is where this device is going to start taking some L's. Out the box, this is one of the worst sounding headsets or headphones that I've ever used. And as you can see behind me by the pile of boxes, and I got way more in the garage, I've used a lot of headphones and headsets. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this device that I got for $50 and I've seen for about $40, the Razer Blackshark V2X, sounds better out the box than the Razer Barracuda Pro. That is an absolute shame. Now let's start with the tuning, because that's where the problems are the most obvious. The bass in this thing out the box is non-existent. A lot of the really deep lows, they either are just not there or they're closer to lower mid-range frequencies. It seems like there's just a massive drop off before the sub bass. You just don't hear anything at all. And the same thing goes for the treble. A lot of sounds like hi-hats and just like any sort of like jingle, like if there's glass breaking or xylophones or wind chimes, anything like that, all of that sounds dull. It's like it's kind of in the upper mid-range instead of the treble where it should be. There's no sparkle and brightness to it. And the reason that's so ironic is because Razer goes on and on their branding about how they're using 50mm biocellulose Triforce drivers. These are supposed to be like better versions of the Triforce drivers that they've been using for a while. And they also talk a ton about their THX AAA, which is their THX achromatic audio amplifier. Experience the world's highest fidelity audio with a powerful built-in amp that delivers maximum dynamic range for pure clean sound across games, music, and movies. And it's ironic because that dynamic range is actually the opposite of what you're getting with this device. You're not getting a powerful separation between very deep bass and very bright shining highs. Instead, it all feels like compressed together. I'm not sure what they did. It's like a weird EQ compressor. So normally I talk about detail and clarity very separate than the EQ curve, but the way that they EQ this device out the box, it weakens that dynamic range so much that a lot of sounds get jumbled together because of it. I'm making this video shortly after a new Warzone map came out, so since I wasn't super familiar with it, I had to move around a lot by sound. If I heard enemies, I kind of had to track them just by sound, and I was getting super lost with this device because the footsteps would be jumbled in with so many other sounds, with airstrikes, with gunshots, with explosions. These were all like mushing together, and the sound separation of these drivers is just not that good. So when you combine the fact that the detail and clarity potential of these drivers isn't that good, that's just kind of how the Triforce drivers are. They're not quite as good as like the Cloud 2 as far as being able to track individual sounds separately. When you combine that with the fact that the EQ is really rough and it kind of compresses everything out the box, and it's a terrible experience for competitive FPS games. Now you can help this thing out quite a bit if you put in a lot of work to EQ. I messed around with the Razer Synapse software a lot. I ultimately came to a kind of a V-shaped curve. I don't have like one preset that I like enjoy necessarily specifically, but if you raise some of the higher treble and some of the lower lows, then you can get some of that sparkle back in the treble. You can get a little bit of that boom in the bass, not like really strong because it's just these drivers don't do that, but you can get it enough so that it can separate the individual sounds from each other while you're playing. And then I dropped down the 1 kHz range, that kind of upper mid range, that kind of presence boost. It makes things airy. It made this device sound a lot less distant and a lot less hollow, because this is really hollow out the box and it sounds like things are kind of far away, kind of like the Logitech G Pro X's. But yeah, with that kind of V shape going on, I was able to help this out quite a bit. But even with all that EQ, this device, the Odyssey Penrose, just completely runs over the Barracuda Pro. The bass in here is not very strong, not very loud. I've said that a lot. I'm a bass head, I love bass, but still the bass gets way deeper. It's way fuller down there. Like this really vibrates without making like a rattle, just like a low boom. That kind, like if you had like a super good subwoofer, one that doesn't rattle, one that just holds its ground and you feel it, you can really get that in the Odyssey Penrose. Not to the point where it's distracting, but so that it separates from the other frequencies. The highs, the separation in them is just super good. You can hear each individual sound, where the different gunshots are coming from. Footsteps, upper mid-range, even when there's a lot of explosions, And I like to use that example of the cluster strikes. You can still track people running on the floor above or below. And I listen to music and movies with the Penrose. Like, it just completely annihilates the Barracuda Pro. And from the little that I listened to the Sony XM4, that thing also sounds way better than the Barracuda Pro. Even though this thing is trying to mimic it, doesn't do that good of a job when it comes to the actual sound quality. Now, something that I found very surprising was the fact that the active noise cancellation actually does have a pretty big impact on the sound, but in a good way. When I turned the active noise cancellation on, it actually increased the bass. It actually sounded a lot more full. So I'm starting to hypothesize that this device was kind of tuned in a way where they were expecting you to turn the ANC on and then start messing with the EQ, because if you boost the bass like way like crazy and then you also have the ANC on, this will start to distort. That's just how the Triforce drivers have really always been with the Black Shark V2X and the Razer Kraken V3. I think, again, the Razer Kraken V3 sounds better than the Barracuda Pro out the box, but those devices, if you just boost the bass just a little bit on them, even over just 2 decibels, like just 3 or 4, they'll start to distort in the bass really fast. You have to do a whole lot more to the bass to get the Barracuda Pro to distort, but you have to do a whole lot more to get it to even sound like those 2 devices. So I think they toned it down way lower to really give you some more leeway when you're actually altering the frequencies. And the same thing goes for the treble. The highs aren't really harsh on this at all, but they're also not really very detailed and they don't stand out very much. So you have to boost them quite a bit to really get them to separate from that mid-range. So I think it's just the tuning out the box is just not that good. When you do get this like all the way like EQ properly, well, properly depending on how you like your EQ, I think that this does sound a little bit better than the Kraken V3 and better than the Razer Black Shark V2. Not by a lot and nowhere close to the Penrose. It's not as good as an EQ'd HyperX Cloud 2. But again, I think the reason that this is tuned so honestly poorly out the box is to give you a lot more leeway when you're changing all the different frequencies, so that when you turn on active noise cancellation, that increases the bass, and then when you also raise the bass in Synapse, that it doesn't distort as fast. Now, a problem with that is the phone app, which I'll talk about in a little bit. You can only go up or down by 5 decibels, so you can't actually ever get the highs or the lows to stand out as much as they really should, because you can't boost them by that much. Now, moving on to surround sound, Razer's surround sound was actually the first surround sound that I've ever tried way back when I got the Razer Black Shark V2 and V2X. Since then, I've tried a whole lot more. I've tried SteelSeries, I've tried Dolby Atmos, I've tried, you know, the ones that come with the Astro 850, I've tried HyperX, I've tried all of them pretty much. And Razer's THX Spatial audio is definitely on the lower end, one of the worst. It seems like it's pretty basic, just boost the highs a bit and then get some reverberation. You can really hear this when you put on vocals, just something that's just like when I'm editing video, if I just have the THX Spatial audio still on, you really hear it's just my voice is like echoing like multiple times. But yeah, it doesn't really add too much extra immersion. Something that I did enjoy was the Dolby Atmos that I used with the Corsair HS80. That thing really got some ambient noise, and that was really cool. Like I felt the wind a lot more, like I was more like right in the ship when I was playing Resident Evil 7. I played Resident Evil 7 with both the Barracuda Pro and the Corsair HS80 to test the surround sound on both of those. Really love the Dolby Atmos a lot more. Now, when it comes to a competitive advantage, absolutely none is to be gained by any of these surround sounds. I'll probably make a dedicated video just talking about surround sound and how much of a gimmick it is. It's not gonna help me in competitive games at all. This is really just like a boost to the treble and some sort of an echo filter added. So the long story short is the Razer Barracuda Pro is a very bad sounding headset out the box, and even when it is properly EQ'd, it just sounds like a lower mid-range type of device. It's like a little bit better than the Razer Kraken V3, but worse than the Cloud 2. Doesn't get close to like the Astro 850 that I have right here, the Drop Plus EPOS PC38X, the Odyssey Penrose. Really no high-end device. It doesn't touch any of those. And you can really tell when a company is overcompensating for something when they use buzzwords like THX achromatic audio amplifier and 50mm biocellulose Triforce drivers. Like the branding is like, what are you even talking about? Bottom line is these just don't sound that good. Now, the microphone audio quality is another major weakness with this device. Now, there seems like there is some potential to actually EQ this and add some different filters and really, you know, alter the
noise cancellation that they have. They have a lot of options in the Razer Synapse software. The problem is, and I'll talk about this in the software section, that software is incredibly buggy. It's been buggy for me for a really long time. I've documented it when I was talking about my Razer Siren V2 Pro, and I've had issues with the V2X also. But Synapse and my PC and my devices, it just really conflicts when I have these different audio sources, and the mic just would not work. So I'll talk about that in a bit. But I have to use the mic just without Synapse installed on my computer right now. This is just, if you plugged it in and just start using it, this is what it would sound like. No filters or anything. Now, because I can't actually use Synapse to control the noise cancellation, from what I've listened to, the noise cancellation is actually extremely good. I've been typing on my keyboard this entire time. There's also the AC that's on, and you can't really hear much of anything. My voice, you can barely hear that also. It's really muffled, it's really quiet, but it is canceling out background noise really well. So I guess that's nice. It'd be nice if I could really EQ this thing and test out all these different filters, but Synapse is just really bad software. I'll be talking about that next. Anyway, this mic overall, not that good in my opinion.
Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about here is the software. Now, I know there is a ton of potential with this. You can do a little bit of alterations to the THX Spatial audio, which I don't think is very good, but you can do that. You get a full 10-band EQ, and as I demonstrated, the way that the Barracuda Pro is tuned out the box, you can really utilize that a lot more than you can on the Black Shark V2 and the Razer Kraken V3, because you just get a lot more leeway without it distorting. And that software is pretty important for this thing because, like I said, it doesn't sound very good out of the box. Now, the problem is I wasn't able to really test it with the mic because the mic just straight up would not work. OBS, Audacity, it was detected by my computer, but even in Windows sound settings, I couldn't record anything. I made sure that the mic wasn't muted. You know, I had it, clicked it in, clicked it out, tested back and forth. I even went in the software to unmute it and mute it there. I've uninstalled and reinstalled Razer Synapse maybe like 10 times so far. Updated the firmware, mic just would not work. It's just buggy software. Just look up Razer Synapse buggy and you'll just see tons of threads, you know, tens, maybe over 100 threads, like on Reddit and just other forums, people talking about the problems that Razer Synapse has given them. And I know there's going to be somebody in the comments, because there always is, who says, oh, the software worked perfectly for me. Well, I'm happy for you and I'm going to let you finish, but Razer Synapse is one of the buggiest softwares of all time. Also, something that I just learned is apparently the volume wheel does not work on Windows when you have Synapse uninstalled. So that's incredibly unfortunate. Now, there's also the phone app. The phone app actually did work for me. The problem is, like I demonstrated, you can only go up and down by up to 5 decibels, so you can't really get that much strength. In the software, both Synapse for PC and the Razer Audio app, you can change the strength of the noise cancellation, which here, let me actually talk about how effective the noise cancellation is. So the idea is it's supposed to, well, cancel out noise that you're hearing so that you just don't hear any sort of like ambient sounds. It kind of sort of blocks it out on its when it's some of its highest values, but not really. If you're outside, it just pretty much does not work at all. When there's cars going by, when you have like one of those AC units and there's like wind and all kinds of different sounds, you pretty much just hear everything. Maybe to get rid of the wind a bit, but you hear most of the sounds. Inside, when it's a lot more controlled, fans and rumbles and stuff like that, it quiets those quite a bit down. There is some of that white noise. I guess that's just how all noise cancellation is, because that's really what it's doing. It's just creating like a noise that like makes it so it blocks out the other sounds. But one of the things it doesn't block out at all is voices. Voices, you just hear them just the same, whether you have it on ambient, whether you have the noise cancellation to its lowest or at its highest, it doesn't really matter. Ambient seems to be more interesting to me, because what ambient does is it kind of it makes voices like a little bit higher pitched. It seems to block out like select frequencies, like cancel out select ones more. Stuff that's kind of like in a higher range, you can still, that kind of still creeps through. But I feel like it's really, there's not that much point to the ambient versus the other one, because when you're outside, you really just hear everything anyway. All right, so for my verdict, would I recommend the Razer Barracuda Pro? No, absolutely not, never. Even if you are a diehard Razer fan, I would tell you specifically to avoid the Barracuda Pro, because if you're like many others, Synapse will give you issues. It might make your mic not work. It might cause you any other number of issues. And if you're not able to use Synapse, then this headset sounds absolutely terrible. And even if you don't have any problems with Synapse at all, this device really sounds like a $60 or $70 headset. $250 as its launch price is an absolutely offensive proposition. The Barracuda Pro is really just another example of a headset that is full of feature bloat, and there's just throw a lot of branding and feature bloat onto it, but it's all kind of just packaged around a fundamentally not actually that good device. It's really just like a slightly altered core product of like the Black Shark V2X, which again, like I said, I bought for 50 bucks. Yes, the drivers are ultimately better when you do a lot of EQ, but not by a whole lot, and they're not better than like the Cloud 2 or the Cloud Alpha.